Um, well, that was amazing. Seeing the kids playing in the water, and I just wanted to reiterate the takeaway from that video is water is life, right? Anywhere that water comes into a region, you see not only the species able to return, but you also see the people returning. So, that's economic opportunities, agricultural opportunities with just recreation too. People enjoy spending time in water, so hopefully that can be extended. We're going to bring in our next speaker here, Christian Bertacchini. Can I probably butchered that right now. Say it again for me, Christian. Got you muted real quick. Let's try and unmute you.
All right. Yes, it's Bertacchini, but that's all right.
There it is.
Most of my life, it's been Bertacchini, so I'm fine with it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Again, like I've said to Laddie and other team members that have collaborated today, I was really inspired by meeting you and your partner, Ned Doherty. He was at my final presentation when I was getting my bachelor's degree in architecture almost 12, 13 years ago. And ever since that time, he really opened my eyes to how do we really change the world, and how do we really restore ecological systems, and how do we build new green economies. And ever since he just described briefly the systems that you guys are working on, it kind of changed my life and started working towards trying to find conduit to or a art panel to allow you guys to work in and around, as well as on top of all the other projects you guys are working on. So maybe you can just give us a quick introduction to your team and your experience, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you, Nathan. And I'm sorry Ned couldn't be with us. You stuck with me instead. He had a previous engagement, but he was very happy to hear that we were able to present what we're doing. So I apologize for the background. I'm quarantining in an abandoned house in Tijuana. Somehow I've managed to travel more during the pandemic than at any time in the last 5 years. And this is my third quarantine already this year. And so I apologize that the background that I had somehow disappeared. But do I have access to can I show the presentation already?
Yeah, you should be able to screen share.
Okay. Can everybody see what I'm seeing?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Okay, I think. How about now?
The topic of this conversation is regenerative seawater agriculture in Baja California South. And yeah, we got that up on the screen. Thank you.
Very well. So as Nathan just introduced, we're going to present you today with something that we're doing in the neighboring state in Baja California South. The company is called Regenerative Resources, and I'll be presenting actually the team at the end. And also at the end, I will tie it back into the Salton Sea. Even though I've cut out a lot of the information about mangroves, there's still a little bit of it in this presentation. And of course, that's irrelevant to the Salton Sea area, but I will tie it in with how this can fit in to the larger context of this conference.
Yeah, and one thing real quick too, I was working with Ned. It must have been 12 years ago. We submitted for the Salton Sea funding. There was a Salton Sea grant, and we were proposing some of these systems, and we were sixth place, which was outside of the funding bracket that only gave the 3 first place winners. And those are the Red Hill Bay projects, the species conservation, and one of the other Torres Martinez projects. 3 of those are kind of still in process, but we were hopeful that we would be able to deploy these systems at the Salton Sea, and hopefully this could be an opener to rebound that conversation.
Well, they're of course very novel, and people, you two more than deserved first place on that particular funding round. But the concept is novel, and sometimes initially scares people off. But well, let's start by saying that what what we look for is opportunities around the world where degraded land has generated poverty. And of course, in a lot of those areas, conservation projects then collapse because of the pressure of these populations. We believe that if we can combine ecological restoration with economic development, and specifically regenerative economic development, we can build partnerships with local populations and do great things and regenerate rural wealth. What we do, of course, in other parts with because of the mangrove, we have a great impact on climate change, especially once we're able to scale this around the world. Here you have a couple of quotes, and the second one is interesting because it comes from NASA, and NASA originally funded the work of the founder of the science that we're using. His name is Carl Hodge, and unfortunately, I just found out this morning that he may have only days left to live, and it's very sad. But Carl was at the epicenter 40 years ago when Mars was the big new frontier, and NASA and other organizations were spending horrendous amount of money to colonize, to see how we could colonize the red planet. And Carl is also one of the chief scientists behind the Biosphere 2 experiment, for those of you who are familiar with that. At one point, Carl built a team, and two of them, three actually, are founding partners of our company. And they started experimenting in Sonora, a system that would allow for agriculture with seawater. And you'll see as the presentation progresses how we intend to implement that in Baja South and where it was implemented previously. I love showing this slide. For those of you who've been in Mexico, maybe you're familiar with the new 500 pesos banknote. That is the view from our property. So if you were standing facing the laguna where these whales are swimming, you would see those mountains in the background. So that's the area that we are in. It's called the Laguna San Ignacio. It's a laguna. It's about 60 kilometers from the village of San Ignacio, which is on the transpeninsular highway that goes from Tijuana to Los Cabos. And here you see the region that we will be impacting either through conservation projects or through the seawater agriculture component that Nathan was referring to earlier. So the pins highlight Fisherman Village, except for the one at the top, El Patrocinio, which is a mountainous region where they have about 8,000 goats. They're destroying the environment, free ranging. And we believe that we can bring a solution to all the challenges that this area is facing. This area, except El Patrocinio, is part of a biosphere called El Vizcaíno, which is located on the border between Baja and Baja South, and extends an area almost the size of Belgium. It's almost 25,000 square kilometers. Those fishermen village that you just saw, in the 80s, there were fewer than 10, actually fewer than 5 teams fishing in that area. And now we have numbers that range from 650 and upward. And of course, what had to happen happened. In the last 5 years, the fish stock has been reduced by 90%. So the collapse of those fisheries is a calamity. I just found out that when I was there just a few weeks ago, that one of the fishermen hadn't eaten for 17 days. That's just the circumstances that they're living under. So what we have been doing Here you see two of the team members, me speaking, and the lady to my right is actually on this call as well. Her name is Geneva. And with two other colleagues, we started by, of course, surveying the region and not making too much noises initially, but then we went straight to the people. And this has been an amazing exchange because, first of all, we were able to demonstrate that even though they are destroying the environment, they have no intention to. That's not what they want to do. That's what they have to do to feed their families. But the idea of having a system that could come in and change that was welcomed with quite a bit of enthusiasm and emotion. So it was great, but what's also great is that during those meetings, we were able to find ways that we hadn't envisioned before of how we can impact the region because these fishermen told us of their issues. And I'll touch a little bit back on that later. And there's a video that I can't show right now, but I will share with Nathan when it goes public. It was shown to Richard Branson just a few weeks ago. And this individual, Geronimo, and another, whose name is Isabel, are very frank about how they are perfectly aware that they are taking more than they're putting back, is what they said, and how they are, in their words, in diapers in terms of understanding not the ecology, they understand that, but they don't know what can be done to do things differently. And again, that goes towards what I was just saying and the enthusiasm that they showed. So going back to a map of the area, these are the, again, the fishermen villages. On the left is the Pacific, and then you have the Laguna San Isidro system. So if you look on the left side, you will see 4 islands. And so project number 1 is that we're going to repopulate. They represent about 8,800 hectares, which of course not every single square inch is plantable, but that's the area that the permits will cover. And so again, this is the 4 islands. The main one's called El Delgadito, and the idea is to plant 12 million mangroves on these islands. Now, mangroves are very important, an important ecosystem, and we hope that they're going to help the fishermen, of course, because 80% of the species of the sea depend on mangroves either for their reproduction or their survival. So the objective is that to demonstrate with this initial restoration project that the ecology will change dramatically for these fishermen. And just to give you an idea of magnitude, the Laguna San Ignacio is about 175 square kilometers, but the wetlands are 1,411 square kilometers. So that's the potential of reforestation that we have before us, and we believe that if we can achieve a significant amount of reforestation in that area, it will benefit the area greatly. I just want to quickly give a shout out to a local genius that we met. This gentleman has no formal education, and yet scientists call him from Germany to ask him how to do things in terms of planting mangroves. He has, over the last 8 years, behaved like a scientist. He's got data about currents and temperatures and cycles of the mangroves, and has personally, with his wife and sometimes the help of a few volunteers, planted over 250,000 mangroves in that area. And if you look at the ground, what is absolutely amazing is that when he planted, if you look at, it's a sandbank, and if you look at the sand, that's exactly how it was for years. There was absolutely nothing grew on it. And as soon as they started planting mangroves, grass, salicornia started coming, They were planting red mangroves, but white mangroves appeared out of nowhere. They've just been doing a magnificent work, and we are looking at taking that to another level with them. Okay, so I went through the mangroves very quickly because, again, it is not hyper relevant to the Salton Sea. But where it becomes much more interesting and much more related is a regenerative agriculture project that we are planning for this property that you see here on the screen. This is how it looks now, and there are people who would like to preserve it that way, and it's impossible. First of all, the pressure of the people I was mentioning before are collapsing those conservation agreements, but also climate change is taking care of what the local population is not. The director of the biosphere told us that by his estimate, in 50 years, all this will be gone and a total wasteland. So just to back to this map, just to give you an idea where the property is. If you look the furthest left pin called La Base, that's roughly where that property is located, and it is from there, as I was mentioning in the beginning, that if you look on the other shore of the laguna, you have the 500 peso note. So here's the system. So the system consists of running. So aquaculture is a double lie. The first lie of aquaculture is that what is not conveyed to consumers is that it creates gigantic dead zones all over the world. Mangroves have been torn out to establish those operations, but then the effluent that they send back into the ocean is just horrible. The second lie of aquaculture is that it is helping overfishing. It's not. 1/5 of the catch of the world goes to feeding aquaculture. Actually, a lot of it is sardine from the southwest of Africa, and the local populations are literally dying because they are priced out of the sardines that they used to be able to consume. So literally, we're killing the environment and people every time we eat a shrimp or anything that comes out of aquaculture. So we are building a system that solves both of these problems. So number one, instead of throwing back the effluent from the aquaculture, and if you see it, I don't know if you see the cursor, but here at the top of the system, you have 6 tanks. The effluent is redirected to that degraded land through 4 canals. You can see one going all around the property, and then there's another 3 that you can. I hope you can see clearly on your screens. And what these canals will do is it will bring the effluent onto that land, fertilize the land, and allow us to build 3 agroforestry systems. The first is an alley cropping between mangroves and salicornia. The second is a mangrove woodland, so a plantation. In that particular scenario, we are harvesting the mangroves, which is not the case in the alley cropping, and also not the case in the constructed wetland. So the excess of effluent from the aquaculture system all ends up in the wetland, and so if any of that water goes back to the ocean or to the lagoon in this particular case, it would be 100% filtered and not polluted. The excess, the wetlands are full of artemias, macro and microalgae, and can be leveraged for oysters, clams, and other filtering animals that then overall produce food for humans and animals. For humans, well, you have the oysters, you have the shrimp, and finfish once we introduce those into the aquaculture system. But the products of this system can be used for feed. I won't go into the details because it would take much too long, but some of the outputs that I just mentioned can be used to feed the shrimp, and others to feed goats. So that allows us to go up the mountain. I pointed out to you at Patrocinio at the beginning, and convince them, and they're already convinced, we already went up there, to corral their animals instead of free ranging them, roaming them around the around nature. CONASA, which is an organization from the Ministry of Agriculture that oversees arid zones, made a study some years back, and they considered that it takes 1,000 goats to produce the same as 120 that are corralled. So 1,000 goats that roam free and destroy the environment only produce what 120 produce in a corral situation. They are not able to corral at this particular moment because the feed is much too expensive. I had heard of a maximum feed price of 150 pesos per bale in the low season. We discovered it's up to 230 or 250 up in the mountains. So it's either subsidized bales that they receive from the government, or sometimes they just, when it's too dry, they just start selling animals for $5 just to get rid of them. And then they can't control the genetic lines. And so all of a sudden you have Frankensteins that not only have deformities, but produce maybe an eighth of what a healthy and genetically sound goat will produce. So we will be able to go to them and basically deliver salicornia and mangrove leaves and a formula also with the algae that will allow them to feed their animals, corral them. We won't be charging them upfront for it, so they will have no capital outlay at the beginning of the season. And then we will take the milk, the meat, and the cheese from them, commercialize it, remove several middlemen, and by that we'll be able to pay them a lot better price for their product that they are currently receiving from what they call coyotes. Here on the border, coyote is somebody who cruises people illegally, but in their area, it's the buyers that compress prices and really buy the product at such a discount that sometimes it's below production costs. So that is the system that we are currently in the process of permitting. We actually have a call with the Secretary of Semarnat tomorrow to present this. We already have the blessing of wildlife and the biosphere to do this. They are currently helping us with the management plan to make sure that it complies with all regulations. But we are well on our way to be able to break ground. We're planning to break ground this year. So again, this is all of the products that can come out of the system. Again, I don't want to go. I've already mentioned most of them, but in short, the system produces food for animal and humans, mostly and almost exclusively with seawater. So the great advantage of this, we presented this to a gentleman who was one of the founders of Earth Day, and he looked at it and he said that was the first scalable ecological project he had ever seen. So he's got 50 years in the business and one of the world's top-rated ecological incubator. And I think that's one of the great strengths of the system. It doesn't depend on fresh water, and as far as we're concerned, as long as there's water in the Pacific, we're fine, and we're able to produce this tremendous amount actually of food, which goes towards food security. It addresses water scarcity, and we're looking for degraded land. So we're not looking at affecting ever any currently healthy agricultural land. We would stay far away from it not to make them saline, and we would never use them because we actually looking for the worst possible degraded land, because we know that in no time our shrimp will make it fertile. This is just an idea of production. Again, those numbers would be different in the Salton Sea, but this is the 10 times increase in biodiversity, major carbon sink, produce about 6.5 tons of food per year. And we would be, and actually that number is correct, but it's wrong. 600 people would be employed for the farm, but the farm would be also leveraged for ecotourism, which represents another 200 workers. So there we go. Circular economy. We'll be increasing the Mexico mangrove forest by 6%. So it's quite an adventure. We're also really excited about the youth and the parents. I had a tough, strongly built fisherman almost crying in front of me once when he realized that his daughter, who has a degree in environmental chemistry, I think, that he could lure her back. He could lure her back home because nowhere could she have an opportunity like in the Laguna now, instead of having to leave because there was no opportunity. So the reaction of the youth has been absolutely tremendous. We actually already located 2 girls who studied marine biology in La Paz, who are from the village there, and they are following up with us on WhatsApp constantly to know when they can start. So it has a tremendous impact on families. It'll allow families to reunite and not to have to leave, because something that's very interesting is that all the youth that are contemplating leaving, when we ask them why they're leaving, it's not because they don't like it there and they can't wait to make more money or see the big cities or anything like that. It's because there's nothing there for them. No intention of leaving if they could stay. So we believe that system will allow that employment is anywhere from technicians, we'll need a whole bunch of scientists, drone pilots, the list goes on, and there'll be employment for everyone. Also, really quickly, I wanted to just show you the Mexican team. We have been blessed to find people in the Baja Peninsula, most of them from Baja South, 2 or 3 are from Baja. And this is talent like you would find anywhere else in the world. I mean, I was raised in Switzerland. I lived in San Diego, and I can't think of anyone with more talent that I've ever met than this group. Again, the last one here on the list is on this call. It's absolutely amazing the level of intellect, of willingness to work with nature and to do great things. I also quickly want to show you the other 5 founding members of the company, just so you can see the expertise that we bring to the table. So the one on the left is Neil. Neil lived in Saudi Arabia for 8 years, and I'll show you in a little bit what he's done there. Taira has worked at a very high level at Deutsche Bank and PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, brings a wealth of financing knowledge, and we've been able to secure actually more money than we need. So that's been quite amazing. Ned, you already heard, he's the star. He's responsible for the first project. I'll show you a picture in a minute. This has been done before. This is not the first time that this system has been implemented. It was implemented in Eritrea, over 1,000 hectares. Unfortunately, because of the conflicts in that area, the team had to leave and abandon the project, but not because it wasn't working. And at the height of the project, there was 800 people working there. Howard and Doug have been involved with Ned and the scientist I mentioned at the beginning, Carl Hodge, for nearly 40 years. Doug participated in the financing of Biosphere 2 and was an executive at Walt Disney. So he brings the licensing and branding expertise that we need to commercialize the product. And he also has experience in food distribution. So this is a Salicornia field in Eritrea. This is one of the products that we are considering for the Salton Sea. We've already had meetings with Nathan, with local stakeholders, both in Mexicali and with the Kukapa tribe. And we look forward when the time is right to implement a system. And this is Neil's expertise. This is a picture of what he did with the Bedouin tribes in Saudi Arabia. As I said, he lived there with his family, just like Ned lived in Africa with his for 8 years. This is his work at the beginning, after maybe a couple of years of regenerating the land. This is a picture he took in 2019 when he traveled there, after he had left. So Neil brings desert agroforestry experience to the table, which of course, since we cannot do mangroves in the Salton Sea, he has a lot of experience with other trees, mesquite in particular, and the economic value of mesquite and how we can integrate that into the system. Of course, not a saline system, but we can build a hybrid and generate rural wealth in the Laguna Salada area. So that's it for my presentation. This is our website, if you want to go to, easy to remember, regenerativeresources.co. And I'll leave you with our new friends, the gray whales of the Laguna San Ignacio.
That's beautiful. Well, I mean, I got to just pull out a little piece when you first started was you're partnering with the local tribes and the local individuals and the locals, the farmers and the property owners. You're not trying to do a land lease without them. You're working with them in every case. I would assume the same if you were doing a project in Saudi Arabia or, to stretch that a little farther, creating the food and the resources for places like Yemen. You wouldn't impose an overlay of your company's systems on them. You would work with them as a collaborative.
Well, absolutely. The project, Neil worked with Bedouins. He had 120 Bedouins who had never seen an American before in their lives, and now think that, have the highest opinion of America and through that the West. And a lot of times in those areas, they don't know what to think about the West, and they think that we're all out to get them. And instead, now there's 120 Bedouins who will defend Neil and the good intentions of the good people in the West. So it even has geopolitical implications at times. But no, absolutely. Not only, it's if you don't take the locals in consideration, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. We learned, as I mentioned, of 2 business opportunities and how to structure them from them, which not only are going to benefit them tremendously. I didn't go into the fishermen too much, but what we proposed to them is to share the hatchery and that we would help them buy better boats so they can fish more and further if they, in the days that they can go out, will work in the hatchery and and volunteer in the reforestation of the mangroves, so that they can regenerate the ocean. By doing that, they become sustainable and they fit within our brand. If they present us a fish that they catch under current circumstances, we could not sell it because our brand is regenerative, what at the very least sustainable. And but by doing that, it becomes sustainable, and we can include them in our brand and do the same as with the goat herders and commercialize their product, which is a win-win. I mean, it benefits them tremendously, benefits us as well, because we have a business model now that fits the area. So just like Neil did, produce a business model that fit the area because he got knowledge from the people. We're imposing actually a condition on any scientist who wants to come work with us that they are under the supervision and of a gentleman that didn't finish high school. And if they have a problem with that, then they can't work with us because we trust the locals. We trust the knowledge that this gentleman has accumulated. The biosphere is telling us, oh, if he's involved, we know that you're good. I mean, the biosphere, which is full of people with degrees and doctorates, consider him the guy to go to in the biosphere, and those are, if you don't talk to the local populations, and if you have that pretentiousness of thinking that because you learned something in the lab or in school that you're worth anything, then they teach you. They show you that you're going to have to rethink everything you learned in the lab because it doesn't work in real life. But they are eager to know what you did in the lab so that they can see how to translate it into what they know. So they're open as long as you don't come, because every time you impose things, they've seen it. They've seen failures after failures. They laugh. When we mention some institutions, they just laugh. Oh yeah, they failed here, they failed there. It's funny.
I want to do a quick bullet point. We got to jump into the next meeting presentation, but 3 quick points. In our conversation before, you mentioned the biosphere, you mentioned that agency. I kind of equate that to what happens in the Salton Sea with the brine shrimp, right? When you have this one species that you're pulling out and saying we have to at all costs protect this one species at the detriment of all of the fish and all of the birds that depend on that ecosystem. It needs to be a more holistic thinking, I think, in the environmental realm, where you can actually enhance that environment and it's not going to be a detriment. The other part too is there could be a viable deployment of this system in and around the Salton Sea as we bring ocean water down from Laguna Salada. So those green zones that I had in our map could be amazing regenerative resources farming, each one of those having 600 to 800 jobs. And that's the important thing, is not only green jobs, but we're talking about financial mechanisms here. And then yet the third one that I'm going to say is, around Laguna Salada, that's equally as important. What you've described here on a more global scale, though, is what we're going to jump into next. Is your systems create not only the ecosystem, but as you saw, $35 million and having the IRR in a relatively low amount of time, 10 years, that is a profitable system. And, to go on top of that, all the biofuel, you're reducing more carbon. So I'm just really excited. This was a great presentation. And, when we scale this up around the world, that's how we can reduce some of the sea level rise. It's just really.
As a concluding comment, this project initially is $25 to $35 million plus 12 for the conservation. But as we scale, it's about $250 to $300 million. And I believe that between what we're doing there, we already have letters of intent from the president of Egypt, from the government of Somaliland, of Mozambique. We have a relationship with the royal family in Saudi Arabia, and already major requests for information from Australia. I think that what we can do between what we're doing in the Laguna and what all of you are talking about doing in the Salton Sea is create models that we can then replicate throughout the world. We already have the European Union looking at us, development banks in Europe looking at us. The UN has already invited us to speak in their conferences. So it's only a matter of time until this becomes a major model for the world. So I just want to leave on that note of hope and vision that what we're all talking about here today is something that is not just regional, is something that will benefit humanity on every continent. Thank you for your time.
That's a message to our new president and all of his administration. Bring that here to Southern California. Thank you so much, Christian. It was a real pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the time.
Absolutely.